Okay, hold on. It is setting up. Oh, are we
Okay.
live now? No.
Not yet. It says live on Facebook. Yeah, yes.
Okay, let's see.
You want to start first? Ladies first.
Wait, you start. Let me make sure that we're live right now, just so
Okay.
that my technology skills these days.
Okay. Well, my name is Ramil Russell. We're back for another prison reform talk, behind or beyond the walls. And we are honored to have a special guest here, Will Knight. He just had a town hall, and it was actually really good with the other candidates for Maricopa County attorney. And I'm just so honored and privileged to be able to speak with you and ask some more questions in an informal type of way, so you can just be comfortable. And I have my lovely co-host right here. She's in the background waving. She's going to introduce herself momentarily. But Will, I thought the town hall went very well. How did you think it went? How do you think?
It was fantastic. I had a great time. I have a lot of respect for my colleagues and a whole lot of respect for the ACLU. Absolutely fantastic questions. I had a good time. It was educational, informative, challenging, and important. So I'm glad
it really was. I like how organized it was. They got all the questions and answering up to par. And I was actually taking notes. I'm like, yeah, that's the question I'm going to ask. So some of the questions I'm going to ask, they may be a repeat. But let's say day one, you're elected. You're the new Maricopa County attorney. What's going to be your first plan of action? What do you think?
Oh, my goodness. I mean, I have like a 20-page
no, you do.
on goals and things that we're going to do. I mean, first thing out of the gate, we shred the policy manual that they're currently operating under, that's stripping our county attorneys of discretion, that's prohibiting them from actually being able to do justice and forcing them to litigate by numbers. Yes, and in its place, we implement some very clear things that are not, this is how you incarcerate, this is how you prosecute, but these are not the priority policies.
Yes.
So we implement policies that say, this is what we shouldn't be focusing on.
Yeah.
Not is what we should be doing in all of our cases. So harm reduction. One of those that's really, really important to me is disclosing the cost of incarceration. I think that's critically important for our line prosecutors to appreciate the harm that happened in that case, but also the community cost of using prisons and jails as a result to redress those harms. So that's a day one priority. And we talked about some of these other things, not charging juveniles as adults. Absolutely,
yes.
Day one priority, we stopped doing that. And we stopped sending jail and prison for substance use disorders, for simple drug possession. That came up a bit during the debate, and I failed to comprehend how Mr. McWhorter and I, how he doesn't see that we have a huge disagreement with each other on this. What I'm trying to get at here is that I am committed to not using our courts to punish people for simple drug possession. The opioid epidemic is incredibly debilitating. People are dying, and punishing people who are suffering from addiction and substance use disorder is not the way to help them recover. We need to create safe, non-criminal environments for people who need help to be able to get that help. Until people are going to continue suffering and continue dying. So my question for him, I suppose, would be, are you going to charge people with felonies for simple drug possession? And I think the answer is either yes, or he and Ms. Gunnagle have finally seen the light and come to my side of the coin.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good answer. I like that. I think Bob touched on it earlier. He said the cost of inmate is $46,000 a year. Is that safe to say that's what it is now here in Arizona?
Yeah, it's actually more expensive to house people in our local jails than it is in prison. But prison is still incredibly expensive. Our prison costs, and this is the DOC's numbers, but it's about $25,000 per person per year. That's from last year's Department of Corrections budget, and it was their initial budget. That budget was $1 billion overall. They then had to go back to the legislature and ask for another $100 million. And then they had to go back again and ask for another $100 million before the year ran out.
Wow.
So approaching $1.2 billion. So that $25,000 per person per year. And we're talking about a number of people in prison 42,000, over 42,000. So that number, I think, is actually closer to 30,000. And when we talk about people with special needs, people who are suffering from mental illnesses, juveniles who are being incarcerated, we're talking 6 figures per person.
Wow.
It's incredibly costly.
It is.
So
hi, Leticia. How are you doing? I see you're eager to ask some questions.
Hi,
take the mic.
So many questions, and I definitely wish that we had more time for a Q&A. I mean, Will, in terms of policy issues, you definitely knock it out of the park, and we're also impressed with everything that you have to say. But I think what makes you so unique, too, as a candidate is that you're the only candidate of color. You are an immigrant, and you're personally impacted by the prison system. So can you tell us more about that?
Sure. What specifically of those things do you want to know more about?
Any of it. And we have, people with questions about what your experience as an immigrant is like, and how that would drive your policy decisions. So specifically from Mike Mazzella, his question that he texted me that he didn't get to ask at the town hall was, the abhorrent racial disparities in our criminal justice system are particularly prevalent in Arizona. Will, as the only person of color in the race, how will your life experiences as a Latino man in America impact your policy decisions?
Okay, good question.
Wow, that's a fantastic question.
That is a fantastic one.
Let me start by acknowledging, I mean, yes, I think it is important that our Black and Brown community have voices and have leaders who reflect their struggle and their background. It's one of the things that's really massively contributing to the disenfranchisement in our diverse communities. 1% of our elected leaders overall are Latino, and the Latino community, the Latinx community, comprises 18% of our population nationwide, 32% here in Maricopa, where we have a really ugly history of disenfranchisement. Mobilizing that community, giving them a voice, somebody they can trust, and somebody that understands where they come from is incredibly important, not just for winning this race. This race is very, very important, obviously, to me and hopefully to you as well, but to winning all the races that are very important down the hall. More voter turnout is good for everybody. The franchise means that everybody should have access to voting. So let me acknowledge my privilege, though. So I am a Latino immigrant, right? But I'm also a cisgendered, heterosexual, white presenting man. I don't have a Latino sounding name. I have a white boy name. I was born with dual citizenship. Like, it's an incredible gift that I had. So I didn't have to struggle as much as even my own relatives, immediate relatives, who sometimes didn't have all of those advantages. And I wouldn't be here talking to you today if I didn't grow up in a state that gave free college. So it was called the Hope Scholarship in Georgia. So I got to go to undergraduate for free because of it. And if I hadn't been able to get good scholarships to go to law school. So I want to acknowledge my privilege first before I claim to be, the standard bearer for all people struggling with diversity problems and struggling from more diverse backgrounds. So my experiences contribute to that because I talked a lot about this during the debate. I know personally what it means to be a victim. I know personally what it means to lose a relative to jails and prisons. So when we're talking about harm reduction, collateral consequences, impact on the community, impact on families of our decision making, unfortunately, you can't ask for somebody with more personal experience with that than me. I understand that acutely, and I think our prosecutors need to be paying more attention to that when we evaluate how we respond to criminal issues. Immigration, incredibly important, obviously. Again, I benefit from being a citizen, but I've had relatives who struggled. And it's difficult to immigrate into the United States, particularly today under the current federal administration. I want to make sure that our immigrant community knows without question that if someone hurts them or they see somebody hurt someone else, the courts are a safe place for them. And I have some specific policies that I'm going to implement to make sure that's the case. We're going to retain control over witness cooperation visas and crime victim visas within my office. Typically, that's handled by the law enforcement agency investigating a case, negotiating with the federal government. we have a law enforcement agency in that office already. We have post-certified investigators. Those are police officers. We have an independent law enforcement agency that should be managing that at the direction of our prosecutors. So that's critically important. And getting rid of what they currently have in place right now, which is this sort of colorblind like policy that they don't consider immigration consequences under the auspices of equality. But sometimes equality is not what we should be focusing on. Sometimes it's equity. It's what's the result. And this is part of my core philosophy. If we have somebody who's here, who's an immigrant, whether they're lawful permanent resident or otherwise, and they get accused of a crime that's going to force deportation, but an American citizen accused of the same crime charged the same way wouldn't. And the right result in that case would be probation so that they can continue working and pay restitution to the victim. Why wouldn't we consider the immigration consequences? Be clever lawyers, find a better way to charge it so that people are still held accountable, but also they have the opportunity to make their victims whole, to reduce harm overall. That's part of my NET program.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you so much, Will. And we are really grateful for your policy proposals and your acknowledgement that for far too long, this has been a colorblind system and
yes.
ignoring the needs of the most marginalized communities. And I think people are so appreciative of your platform. Ramiro,
yes,
what do you
really
think?
Are. Thank you so much. I'm flabbergasted. I mean, he hit the nail on the head. You said something in the town hall I wanted to address. You said you wanted to partner with some communities or some minority groups. Do you have anyone specifically in mind you wanted to partner up with? Any nonprofits you wanted to get with? Or
yeah. So let me just clarify what I'm talking about here. I believe that our community deserves a say in how we police and how we prosecute. So yes. I think I'm a big fan that the city of Phoenix finally implemented civilian oversight. I think our prosecutors' offices should be doing that too. So I want to create a community oversight board that involves all stakeholders, from our marginalized communities to other stakeholders in the system. I'm really looking forward to working with folks from our activist communities that have been advocating for our marginalized community for years now. So Lucha, the Puente Human Rights Movement, Poder in Action, Mass Liberation, Black Lives Matter, the Phoenix Black Organizing Collective. But I also think to do that effectively, we need to include stakeholders from our broader community. So from the criminal defense bar, the indigent defense bar, from our courts, our jails, and even law enforcement. To have a robust community oversight board that brings everyone's perspectives to the table and then has actual input on policy, on how we charge, why we charge, and what the results and outcomes that the community demands from that office should be.
Wow. Well, thank you once again for allowing us to ask these questions. And you got my vote. I mean, thank you so much. I mean, I love the policy that you want to implement, and I'll be praying for you.
So, Will, one more thing. I know that you kind of touched on this at the beginning. So Bob has been saying that he sees really no difference policy-wise between all the candidates running. So between the three of you, I know you've addressed some of the policy issues that you feel you differ. And so overall, is it my understanding that you're advocating for also a more comprehensive change? So especially in terms of mental health, and you're also looking to partner with our educators and other aspects to form a more coherent and comprehensive solution to some of the challenges that we're facing. So is that an area where you feel like you differ from other candidates, or is there anything else that you would like to add to that?
Absolutely. I think that is maybe the most important area where I differ from my colleagues. And I think it's contributed to largely because I think I've the most relevant experience of anybody in this race by virtue of the time that I've been in the trenches helping our indigent community, our most marginalized and over-criminalized communities. So I would encourage you and anyone else watching or listening to please check out the ACLU's questionnaire. They held us to task. They put it on their website. You can look at those questions side by side and determine for yourself. I think maybe question 2 or 3, one of the most important ones, what is your specific plan for ending the incarceration crisis, for decarcerating? And I have the most comprehensive plan to get that done. Ms. Gunnagle has a good plan. I think it was to reduce the mass incarceration crisis by 26% by the year 2024 in order to bring Arizona closer to the national average. I think Arizona deserves better than average. I think Arizona should be a thought leader in this space. And I do not think that we should be an average part of a mass incarceration crisis that has made this country the most incarcerated country in the history of the world. So my plan is a little more aggressive than hers, and it's a lot more comprehensive. I'm talking about reducing Maricopa County's contribution to jails and prisons by 50%, period. My first 4 years. And in doing so, thinking ahead, looking past, not just not doing the things we shouldn't do, but what can we do instead? So what do we do with that literally $400 million per year that I'm going to save Arizona taxpayers by doing that? What can we do with some of that money instead? Because some of it we should save. We don't need to spend everything, right? But with some of that, with a small portion of that, we can do so much to improve public safety in our communities. And that was one of the things I talked about most during the debate, so I'm not going to bore you with it again.
So during my time listening to some of these debates at the legislature, it seems that in terms of public safety, people who don't want to support criminal justice reform now feel that reform is somehow equivalent to ignoring the voices of victims or making our community less safe. What would you say to those people?
Good question.
I would say take a look at the letters yourselves, right? Read the transcript, read the letters, inform yourself. What I think our current county attorney and what people who believe that are trying to do is to divide us. They're trying to create the appearance that they're the only ones who are promoting public health and safety, and those of us who are activists or advocates who are advocating for reform don't care about that at all. It's more us versus them, tough on crime rhetoric, and we need to absolutely move past that. The bottom line is nobody is soft on crime. That's a myth. When I say we need to end the tough on crime culture, it's end exactly what you're talking about, that mentality that the only way to make us safer is to put everyone who commits any crime in a cage. We have so many crimes on the books, it's gotten out of control. You can indict a ham sandwich, right? You can literally send someone to prison for shoplifting. Which shoplifting is not a good thing, but do we really need to be sending people to prison for it at the catastrophic cost that we're all paying for that? So what I'm talking about is departing from that mentality and instead prioritizing public safety from a holistic perspective. Harm reduction, what caused this to happen? How do we help set people up to make sure it never happens again? I'll tell you one thing that Republicans and Democrats completely agree on is that no matter why someone comes into contact with the justice system, whether it's because you're accused of a crime, whether it's a serious crime or a minor crime, whether it's because you're a crime victim, all of us agree that it should be the only time that your life is so upended that you end up caught up in the justice system. That is a nonpartisan issue. And what I'm talking about is ending the cycle of recidivism that continues to put people back in there, continues to harm victims, continues to damage our public safety, and continues to damage people's ability to live functional lives and contribute to the economy.
Good.
Well, thank you for that, Will. Romeo, do you have any last minute questions? Will, I know you must be so tired from a whole day's worth of prepping for this call, and I hope you're proud of yourself. And it's also, I'm also grateful to your colleagues as well. I think it's brave of all of you to be standing up for marginalized communities and our justice system and to be outspoken advocates for the changes that we have to make. And one thing is that this race is more than just a criminal justice system. It impacts immigration. And if Roe v. Wade were to fall, it impacts whether women seeking abortions would be prosecuted. It is just so entrenched in our community. So I am so excited for you and for all of you. So thank you so much, Will.
I'm excited too. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ramiro. I'm grateful just to be here helping and fighting alongside the two of you. Ramiro, you're an incredible advocate. You know better than just about anyone how our justice system can fail someone. So thank you for all the hard work you do. And Letitia, you are a brilliant young lawyer, and I cannot wait to see how you change our state and our country over the next 20 years of your career, 30 years of your career. You're an incredible advocate already. The work you did working with the women in Perryville, and your advocacy for justice reform in general, and your ability, capacity, and commitment to reaching across the aisle and making this a nonpartisan effort. I respect the hell out of it, and I'm grateful to be fighting alongside you.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Good to see you, bud.
Yes, sir.